Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, pretty novel happening over in Switzerland.
Yeah, it's about turning that unused space, between train tracks into solar power plants.
Exactly. And if you're looking to get up to speed quickly on a potentially significant climate solution, this is kind of your fast track.
Definitely. Our info today is mainly coming from SWY, swisseninfo.ch. They've been doing some great reporting on climate and energy solutions.
Right. So our mission, if you will, is to really dig into the potential and also the questions around this tech from a Swiss startup called Sunways. They're calling it revolutionary.
And there's a lot to unpack. Removable panels, interest from other countries, how it fits into Switzerland's energy goals. It's quite a story.
It really is. So let's start at the beginning. Where did this whole idea even come from?
Well, it's a great little anecdote, actually. It started back in 2020. Joseph Scuderi, who founded Sunways, was just waiting for a train in Renens, I think. And he's looking at the tracks at that empty space between the rails and basically just asked himself, why aren't we using that? Simple as that.
Huh. It's often those simple observations, isn't it? Just seeing wasted space.
Exactly. But going from that thought to where they are now with a live trial, that
Yeah.
took about 5 years of work.
5 years. So tell us about this trial. What does it actually look like?
So they've set up a pilot project near Buttes out in western Switzerland. It's a 100-meter stretch of solar panels installed right there on the track.
Okay, 100 meters. So like on the sleepers,
Yeah,
the things the rails sit on.
precisely. Placed right on the railroad sleepers. Scuderi himself compared it to a standard rooftop installation in terms of how they sit.
But that's a twist, right?
No.
Something about them not being permanent.
Yes, and this is really the core of the Sunways system. They're removable. That's the revolutionary part they talk about.
Removable. Why is that so important?
Well, think about track maintenance. You need to get access to the rails, the ballast, replace sleepers sometimes. If the panels were fixed permanently, it would be a huge hassle.
Ah, okay. So you can just pop them out when work needs doing.
Essentially, yes. They've actually partnered with another Swiss company, Scheutzer. They do track maintenance and developed a special machine.
A machine just for this.
Yeah. Apparently, it can install or remove almost 1,000 square meters of these panels in just a few hours, which is pretty fast.
Wow, that avoids major disruption to train services then.
That's the idea, minimize downtime. And they've even thought about cleaning.
Cleaning.
Yeah.
How do you clean solar panels between train tracks?
They've designed a kind of cylindrical brush system that can be fitted onto a train. As the train runs, the brush cleans the panels.
Huh. Okay, they seem to have thought through a lot of the practical stuff. Now, putting solar near tracks isn't totally new, is it? I feel like I've heard about projects elsewhere.
You're right. Other countries, Germany, Italy, France, Japan, for instance, have experimented with solar on or near rail lines.
So what makes Sunways different?
The key difference is this removable system on active lines. Sunways seems to be the first to really trial that specific approach, tackling that maintenance headache head on.
Gotcha. The removability on working tracks is a unique selling point, and they've got backing for this trial.
Oh, yeah. They have support from over a dozen partner companies, plus funding from InnoSUS, the Swiss Agency for Innovation Promotion.
So serious investment.
The Buttes trial itself has a budget around CHF 585,000, so roughly 700,000 US.
Okay. And what about the power output from this 100-meter test section?
They estimate it could generate up to 16,000 kilowatt hours per year. The electricity just feeds into the local grid.
16,000 kilowatt hours. So for context, you said that's enough for maybe, what, 4 to 6 homes?
Roughly, yeah. Or maybe driving an average electric car about 100,000 kilometers. It's a pilot, but it gives a baseline.
Right, a proof of concept. So scaling up, what's the bigger vision here, the ultimate potential?
Well, Sunways is thinking big. They've talked about potentially equipping half the world's railway lines.
Half the world. Okay, that's ambitious. Let's maybe focus on Switzerland first. What's the potential there?
Okay, yeah. So Switzerland has about 5,300 kilometers of track. If you take out tunnels and areas that don't get much sun, Sunways estimates they could generate around 1 billion kilowatt hours annually from the remaining network.
1 billion kilowatt hours. Wow. How does that stack up against Switzerland's total electricity use?
That would be around 2% of their current total electricity consumption, which might not sound huge, but it's enough to power about 300,000 households.
And Switzerland has some pretty ambitious solar targets, right?
They do. They're aiming for a seven-fold increase in solar energy by 2035 as part of their net zero strategy. So an extra billion kilowatt hours would certainly help towards that goal.
It definitely contributes. And this potential hasn't gone unnoticed internationally, I gather.
Not at all. They're already in talks or collaborations in South Korea, Spain, and Romania. And there's been exploratory interest from China and the US too.
South Korea seems particularly keen.
Yes, definitely. The CEO of a tech firm there, KRSPGPC Taiwan Park, actually came to the inauguration in Buttes.
Flew over for it.
Seems so.
Yeah.
He's apparently very interested in the electrical connections and especially that installation removal system for South Korea's network, which is quite large, about 6,600 kilometers. They're looking at starting a pilot project there this year.
That's fast movement. What about other places like Indonesia?
There's interest there, too. Dieter Napatupulu from an Indonesian solar engineering firm, Mutatron Atoma, sees potential starting maybe in the city of Bogor and then potentially wider.
In Japan, they have lots of trains and limited land.
Japan's watching closely. Their Ministry of Transport, MLIT, sees it as relevant to their 2050 decarbonization goals. But they have questions, especially around safety and how it impacts their existing maintenance routines. Understandably cautious.
Understandably, yeah. So lots of international buzz. But what about the view from, say, the Swiss transport authorities, the regulators?
Right, the Federal Office of Transport, or FOT. Florence Pictet from the FOT acknowledges that rail companies are innovating with renewables, pointing out they already use building roofs for solar.
But they're cautious about putting panels directly on the tracks.
They are taking a measured approach. They authorized Butte's trial, but significantly, they extended it. It was initially planned for 6 months. Now it's 3 years.
3 years. Why so long?
Mainly because the trains on that particular line aren't very fast. Max speed is only 70 kilometers per hour. They want long-term data from this less demanding environment first.
Makes sense. What specifically are they looking at over those 3 years?
They want data across all seasons. They need to understand how the track itself behaves long-term, any extra wear and tear, and also the nitty-gritty of maintenance and monitoring with these panels in place. Safety and reliability are paramount.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the regulator view. What about people in the wider green tech world?
Lubomila Jordanova from the Green Tech Alliance is quite positive. She called the system highly scalable, efficient, and environmentally friendly.
What does she like most about it?
A key point for her is using existing infrastructure. It avoids using up more land for energy generation, which is a big plus.
Right, leveraging what's already built. We also heard from Martin Heinrich at the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany earlier.
Yeah.
What was his take?
He thinks exploiting railway tracks is fundamentally a great idea. It fits that strategy of using built-up areas instead of undeveloped land. He saw the global potential, too, given the basic concept.
I remember there was but he had a reservation about the removability, didn't he?
Yes, and it's a really crucial counterpoint. While Sunways highlights removability for maintenance, Heinrich questions if it's actually ideal long-term.
Why's that?
His argument is that solar panels should ideally last 20 or 30 years without needing to be moved. Every time you remove and reinstall them, he suggests you add cost and risk damaging the panels.
So the very feature Sunways emphasizes might actually be a long-term drawback in terms of cost and potential damage.
That's the concern he raises. It's a trade-off. Ease of track access versus the potential lifespan and economics of the panels themselves, a really important point for the long-term assessment.
It really highlights that tension in innovation, doesn't it? Solving one problem might introduce another complexity.
Exactly. Which loops back to Lubomila Jordanova's point about using existing infrastructure efficiently, you have to weigh all these factors.
Okay, so let's try and sum up this deep dive. We've got this Swiss startup, Sunways, with a genuinely innovative idea: removable solar panels between train tracks.
Right. A system designed to generate power while still allowing for essential track maintenance. We've seen the potential scale, both in Switzerland, maybe 2% of their electricity needs, and potentially globally, with real interest from countries like South Korea.
But we've also heard the important considerations: the need for long-term data, which the 3-year trial in Buttes aims to provide, questions about track wear, maintenance logistics,
And that key debate around removability itself. Is it a necessary feature for access, or a potential long-term cost and fragility issue, as Martin Heinrich suggested? It's a mix of excitement and cautious evaluation.
So for you listening, hopefully this gives you that thorough understanding quickly. You've heard the pitch, the potential, the international buzz, but also the practical questions and expert reservations. It's a fascinating case study.
Absolutely. And it does leave you with a broader thought, doesn't it? If we can potentially turn train tracks into power generators, what other existing infrastructure holds untapped energy potential?
That's a great question. I mean, think about highways, canals, maybe even things like airport land.
Mhm.
Could these vast networks be repurposed?
It makes you wonder, what are the biggest hurdles, technical, economic, regulatory, to unlocking that potential more widely? Something to definitely chew on, thinking about how we blend our infrastructure needs with our sustainable energy goals.